How do airline pilots handle complicated taxi instructions, specifically with airports that we've never been to? So, when you're starting flight training, one of the most stressful parts about learning to handle the radios is taxi instructions. A lot of people are nervous about writing them down. It's hard to write them down, especially when they're talking so fast. So let me give you a quick little overview of how airline pilots are so good at that. So first and foremost, it's something that we've been doing for a long time, right? When you get to the airlines, you've been in aviation for a long time. In most cases, 1,500 hours at least of flight experience prior to getting to the airlines. And in many cases, it's much more than 1,500 hours of experience. So the first thing is we've just been doing it for a long time. Secondarily, there are tons of different ways that we go about mitigating confusion once you get to the airport. So the first and foremost way is preparation. So we know where we're going, obviously. We know the airport we're going to, and in most cases, we know the gate we're going to far before we even land. So when we're doing our briefings, usually before we even start descending, we have an opportunity to discuss what runway we're landing at the airport and what gate we're going to, so we know where we're landing and where we're going. With that information, we're able to decipher the most likely taxi route, and we will usually brief that taxi route. So a lot of airports have something called standardized taxi routes, where we literally know exactly what we're going to get because every airplane follows that standardized taxi route. Some larger airports have these. Houston, for example, IAH has the standardized taxi route, so it makes it pretty easy to taxi in those places, even though they're big and complicated. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing you can do is just use kind of your logic and your tribal knowledge of knowing that airport, right? So we fly to a lot of airports, we see a lot of different things, and you start to pick up on trends and patterns with specific airports. So for instance, if you go to Chicago, large airport, a lot of taxiways, but you start to know the flow of how Chicago works. And then once you go in there, you're able to start to get a mental picture of how they do it. And so the next time you go in there, you know what to expect. So yeah, standardized taxi routes are huge, but generally speaking, we know the gate, we know the runway, so we can start to map out exactly how we think we're going to get there, and we'll brief that. And then if there's any changes once you land to that, you can kind of talk about that in the moment. But yeah, knowing ahead of time, generally having a mental picture of where you're landing, how you're going to get to the gate, that makes it very stress-free once you land. The captain's the one taxiing the airplane, so the FO usually writes down the instructions. They'll give you your taxi instructions, FO write it down, and in most cases we'll just say, all right, taxi is as briefed. That's exactly what we briefed, and if there are differences, you might go over those verbally. The FO might read them back to the captain or give them in-the-moment instructions on, hey, this is what they said, heads up, it's going to be this, 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 this. So it's really not that hard at the end of the day. Taxiing can be stressful just because there's a lot of things that happen on the ground, but typically in the airlines, it's a very streamlined and day-to-day process. It's very regimented, it's routine, it's something that we do all the time, so very few pilots are going to get stressed out by that because, again, it's what we do every single day. So yeah, to answer your question, how do we handle complicated taxi instructions at airports we've never been to? Number one, first and foremost, it is briefing. At your cruise, your top of climb, we're going to brief, or before your top of descent, I guess, you're going to brief your taxi instructions, what you think you're going to get. I should say your alleged taxi instructions, your anticipated taxi instructions. You're going to brief it. You're going to talk about the runway, how you think you're going to get to the gate. Once you get there, all those different things, different frequencies you're going to have to use along the way. It's all briefed, right? So we don't like to go into airports without having a game plan. And if there are changes, we'll brief those changes on the ground. So hopefully that answers your question. And yeah, it was a good one.